Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and today we are checking out another very cool Carnotaurus from Aulita Heroes. Yes, you might be thinking, didn't you just review one? Well, we actually have quite a few that have just launched from Aulita Heroes, so that's definitely, something that I'm very excited about, being a massive Carnotaurus fan. It's my favorite species of all time, which I say all the time, so I think if you are a pretty common viewer of this channel, you're gonna know that already. But what's also cool about this one is you can see it's a very different style from any of the other Aulita Heroes figures I've ever reviewed, because this is the very first time we have the opportunity to check out a statue style version from Aulita Heroes. This is a non-articulated statue type Carnotaurus, and it looks super cool. Again, it's a very exaggerated version and definitely sports that kind of classic Aulita Heroes look and feel, which is definitely not a bad thing by any means, especially if you are like me and you love kind of like old school 80s style monster movies and stuff. Like if there was an 80s monster, or should I say dinosaur, horror movie, I feel like this is definitely what the Carnotaurus would have looked like. So very cool looking figure. I'm going to readjust the camera here just a little bit, bring this in for a closer look. So if we actually start here in the head sculpt, you can see the head sculpt looks really good. We've got some very nice looking skin texture, as well as some fantastic paintwork overall on the figure. Really nice kind of bumpy skin texture here in the face. It looks very rough and rugged. Like I could definitely imagine the skin texture of this being extremely hard to like penetrate with any sort of a weapon or anything from another dinosaur. Like it just generally has the look of being extremely tough skin texture. They've done a great job when it comes to actually applying a good bit of variation of color, mostly dark tones, but there's all sorts of subtle variations to the color throughout the head of the Carnotaurus. We can also see a darkening there around the eye, and a really nice lighter dry brushing, kind of like a light gray or almost even bordering on like a pink in some areas, dry brushing here in the face that moves through most of the body for the Carnotaurus. We can see the horns up there, which actually feature kind of like mixtures of oranges and yellows and even greens in such a small area. It's very impressive to see so much paintwork applied. We can see the eyes are painted with a white, given a black pupil. They also look really good, and the mouth is open on our Carnotaurus. We can see the tongue on the inside of the mouth, and we can also see the teeth and everything, and the teeth have a very dirty look to them. We can actually also see the detail in general throughout the inside of the mouth, and even the inside of the mouth actually features variation of color, which just again shows you how impressive the paintwork is all the time for these figures. We can see the nostrils there on the tip of the snout, but like I was saying, I kind of got off track there. The teeth are like really dirty looking, making this again have that very eerie and creepy look that these figures often have, which I really enjoy. As we move down here through the side of the dinosaur's neck, you can see some kind of like almost reddish tones down in the bottom part of the neck moving into the throat. We can also see some more, actually even a little bit of reddish tones up here, almost pinkish tones as well, but more of that really bumpy skin texture here up on the back of the neck of the Carnotaurus. And then when you come down here, you can see the throat itself. As you move down a little bit further, we can see that the Carnotaurus continues to have that very rough and rugged skin texture, but as you move down here into the side, it's not quite as bumpy as you see up there in the top. Like not so many small kind of bumpy scales, just really big looking skin texture, really rough looking skin texture as you move down here. As you move down into the arms, they as well honestly look pretty creepy. We can see the elbow there on the back of the arm, and then the fingers, those really tiny fingers down here on the tip of the hand of the Carnotaurus. As we move back into the stomach, you can see again some more skin wrinkles and folds and all sorts of really impressive skin texture, as well as lots of variation of color throughout that area. As you move back up into the back, again we continue to see that very rough and rugged skin texture moving down along the back, and I think he's done such a good job of painting this one out to give it those dark tones that I would expect to see on something like this, especially when it comes to like a monster-ish kind of Carnotaurus. It has perfect coloration to it, but also just generally in applying the paintwork. Like, it is so nicely applied. As we move down here into the leg, you can see the musculature of the leg, as well as, again, some more really rough and rugged skin texture. And you can even see lighter tones of like reddish tones popping up in between some of the cracks and crevices of the skin. You move down into the front of the leg, and you can see the kneecap right there, a nice big bulging calf muscle. And we transition to a darker tone as we move down into the foot sculpt. And what's cool is you can see we have like this little base, like a little silver base, which does actually feature the Aulita Heroes logo right there. And the Carnotaurus has its kind of claws extending over the side of the base. That does look really cool. And then we move back up here into the tail, and you can see a very different style of skin texture here to the underside, as well as those really bumpy scales and stuff up here on the top of the tail. And as we move out, I feel like the tail somehow has even more rough and rugged, very bumpy looking skin texture as you lead out through the rest of the tail. You can also see that it does have some pretty significant length to it as you move out through the remainder of the tail of the Carnotaurus. If we turn over here to the opposing side, again, you can see how the Carno now has its head kind of turned away from us. We can also take note to the ear right there, but it is facing away from us on this side. The skin texture, again, continues to look really well done. That dry brushing has brought out all of that detail perfectly. We move down, we have the arm again held kind of in pretty much the same position as what we had seen on the first side. If we actually look at it from the front, you can see again like the musculature, even the kind of stomach sucking in there around the rib cage a little bit. Very impressive fine details. And the paintwork looks really nice down here as well, with all of the different reddish tones and stuff. Like, there is just so much work that goes into the paintwork of these figures. You can see much smaller, kind of finer, bumpy scales as you move down along the inside of like the thigh and the groin area, moving down toward the inside of the legs as well. As you move back here, you can of course see the very impressive muscle definition of the leg. Again, the nice big calf muscle, and this foot is actually picking up off of the ground as the dinosaur is taking a step. You can see the back of the foot lifting kind of up off of the ground, and then we lead out again through the tail with that really nice curve. So it's super cool to have something like this from Aulita Heroes and actually have more statue-style versions of dinosaurs now officially in their line. It also has almost like a vintage style to it, because you can see it standing very upright in somewhat of a tripod kind of position, which sort of gives it the look of being like an old school Carnotaurus. Like if we had seen Carnotaurus, you know, years and years before it was even discovered, but like portrayed back in like the 60s or something. Like, I could definitely imagine Carnotaurus looking something similar to this when it comes to the design they would have come up with. As far as a size goes, for a length from the tail to the head, you're looking at about 8 inches, or around just a hair under 20.5 centimeters. Actually, if we go to the horn, about 21 centimeters or 8.25 inches. But that's not exact science, because the body's kind of all curled up, and if the tail was extended, it would be significantly longer. Height-wise, you're looking at pretty much 6 inches on the dot, or a little over 15 centimeters. For a size comparison, there is Mr. Papo T-Rex, the Attack Pack Colovosaurus, Robert Muldoon, and the Collect Day Human Being next to our Aulita Heroes Carnotaurus. And you can see, again, it does have a pretty nice size to it, but it's not gigantic or anything like that. However, next to these other figures, especially Mr. Papo T-Rex, I feel like you can get a pretty good idea of the size. And for just a random Carnotaurus comparison, we have the PNSO version of Carnotaurus next to this super cool old school style Aulita Heroes version, and you can see obviously the PNSO release is a bit smaller. And if we actually bring in the more recently created biblically accurate version, El Toro Blanco, as far as the Carnotaurus goes, you can see again the articulated Carnotaurus is definitely a bit smaller than the statue-style version. And then just a few super random comparisons. We have the Collect Day Deluxe Dimetrodon, that's obviously smaller, and a Mattel Velociraptor, which very clearly is a good bit smaller than our Carnotaurus. So I love the fact that Aulita Heroes is now going in this direction on top of their articulated figures. You know, it sometimes can be a negative for a company to only produce articulated figures, because there are people out there that do not like them at all. They don't like the seams or anything. They would definitely much more rather just a straight up model with no weird articulated joints or anything like that. You know, there was a time I was like that as well. I actually used to really dislike articulated figures for a period of time, and really just loved and stuck to model type dinosaurs. I have, of course, changed my opinions on that and now love articulated figures, but I also still love classic statue style figures. So having them now in the Aulita Heroes line, in my opinion, is absolutely awesome. And I love the fact that the very first one that I get to take a look at with you guys is the Carnotaurus, my favorite dinosaur of all time. And they've done a tremendous job on this, pretty much creating this almost in exactly the way I could imagine a Carnotaurus looking if it was, you know, discovered way earlier than it was. You know, if this was discovered 60 or 70 years ago, it probably would have looked something like this when it comes to the overall design. So I really love that aspect about this model. But in general, Aulita Heroes has done a tremendous job on the sculpting of this. The skin texture is extremely impressive, and there is tons of very impressive skin texture from head to tail on this model. And it's also got a pretty cool pose with the tail kind of whipping around it and the mouth wide open, kind of letting out a vocalization or something, looking very ferocious and obviously very creepy when it comes to Aulita Heroes' incredible sculpting style. They've given it that kind of monster-like look. Actually, you know what this really reminds me of? If Carnotaurus was in Carnosaur, I feel like this is what it would look like. That's like pretty much the perfect way to describe this Carnotaurus. But overall, absolutely epic sculpt, really, really nice paintwork. Again, the paintwork has so much variation of color while still maintaining that very nice and dark and gritty look and feel. So I love the paintwork as well. And of course the pose, and I like the fact that it's kind of stepping over the Aulita Heroes symbol. That's super, super cool as well. So without a shadow of a doubt, an awesome release from Aulita Heroes. If you are interested, as I mentioned in my previous review, the Aulita Heroes figures that he has created like this are currently, you know, going up on the shop. So of course make sure you're following them on Instagram or whatever social media account you use, but also just make sure you are following their store and their website, because whatever he's creating and putting up there now is actually on sale for Christmas, so you can get them at a bit of a cheaper price. And once that is all over and done with, and once all the stuff that he has created is sold, whatever he's creating past that point is going to go up as pre-orders, so the price will be increased and stuff, and there would be a little bit of a wait before the figure would be ready. So make sure you check the link that I will include in the description. Definitely pick this up because it is awesome, and like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.